Hi, I'm Sarah, 26 years old. I lost my parents at a young age in a tragic car accident. With no family to care for me, I was placed in an orphanage, where I spent 3 years before being adopted. My adoptive parents were incredibly wealthy, and their presence transformed my life. Despite their fortune, they kept my adoption a quiet matter, believing in doing good without seeking attention. As I became an adult and moved into my own place, my adoptive parents set off on a business venture in Europe. That was when I met Mark, my now ex-husband. We crossed paths in college and instantly clicked. He was cheerful, kind, and easy to be around. As we spent more time together, we began dating, and soon, we were officially a couple. We seemed perfect for each other, but there was one issue: Mark's family didn't approve of me. Our first meeting took place after graduation, when Mark thought we were both settled enough to introduce me to his parents. He had warned me that his family could be quite judgmental, so he wanted to make a good impression. I was nervous. By the time I met them, we had been dating for 4 years and were engaged, which made me even more anxious. His parents hadn't even known I was his girlfriend until then, and I was afraid the news of our engagement would make things worse. "I'm sure they're going to hate me," I told Mark the night before. He reassured me, "They won't, trust me." "Do you really think they won't be shocked when they find out we're engaged?" "Well, yes, but it shouldn't be a huge deal." "Are you serious? You were worried about introducing me to them before, knowing how judgmental they can be. You really think they won't judge us even more once they know we're engaged?" "Look, if they do judge, does it really matter?" "It won't matter to me, but I'm not sure about you. You care so much about what they think." "I promise it won't bother me, Sarah." "Alright, if you say so. But maybe we should wait a month to tell them, just to be safe?" "I'm fine with whatever makes you comfortable." In the end, we decided to keep the engagement quiet for now. Mark wanted to ease into things, and I didn't want to make the situation harder than it had to be. He had always been so careful about his parents' opinions, and I had come to understand why. His family was very wealthy and accustomed to luxury. They only accepted people into their circle who could match their lifestyle, and I didn't fit their standards. I had kept the details of my background to myself, not wanting to be judged for my family's financial situation. I foolishly believed they could see me for who I was, not my wealth. But I was wrong. The dinner was set at an upscale restaurant, and as we walked in, Mark held my hand firmly. I wore my engagement ring around my neck, to keep it discreet. From the moment we arrived, I could tell his parents weren't happy. They were strict about punctuality, and we were 2 minutes late, which already set the tone for the evening. His parents barely acknowledged me as they scrutinized me with cold stares. I felt invisible, small, and uncomfortable in their presence. The longer they ignored me, the stronger my urge to leave became. I kept my head down, avoiding eye contact, until Mark finally broke the silence. "Mom, Dad, stop ignoring Sarah. This is my wonderful girlfriend." "Hello, it's a pleasure to meet you both," I said, forcing a polite smile. His mother's response was a sharp "hi," her voice frosty. Mark's father eyed me, then asked, "So, Sarah, how did you manage to get into this college?" "I understand the tuition's steep, and it's a tough one to get into." Before I could respond, Mark snapped, "Dad, that's enough. Don't interrupt me, Mark." "Sarah, please answer." "I received a scholarship," I said, my voice steady. "I'm really grateful for it, as it gave me the chance to meet Mark, which has been a blessing." His mother sneered. "Of course, it's a blessing. He's wealthy, and you need that kind of money. At least you're intelligent, though your looks aren't anything special." Mark stood up, visibly furious. "We're leaving. Let's go, Sarah." As we walked out of the restaurant, I couldn't process what had just happened. I had dressed up carefully, kept things modest, and yet, from the moment I sat down, Abigail and Charles had decided I wasn't good enough for their son. The drive home was quiet, after that terrible dinner. Mark stopped talking to his parents for a while. They sent him a text accusing us of being disrespectful for walking out on them, but Mark didn't respond right away. About a month later, he finally told them that we were engaged. His parents were furious, but Mark made it clear that he wouldn't contact them again if they said anything negative about me. They offered to pay for our wedding. But only if they could control every detail. Neither of us wanted that, so we decided to elope. My adoptive parents, who were in Europe, knew about our plan and supported it. They were happy as long as I was happy, and they even sent us a gift, a beautiful, expensive painting. Mark raised his eyebrows at the gift, but I brushed it off, thinking it was just their way of showing they had the means to be generous. After we got married, we attended a party that Abigail and Charles threw for their anniversary. Honestly, I was surprised they even invited me, given how they felt about me, but when we arrived, I was completely ignored by everyone. It wasn't just Abigail and Charles, it felt like the whole room was treating me like I didn't exist. I stayed close to Mark, but whenever I tried to join a conversation, people either looked me up and down and walked away or kept talking to Mark as if I hadn't spoken. By the end of the night, I was in tears. I felt humiliated and disgusted by how I was treated. As Abigail and Charles began their anniversary speech, I hoped things might improve, but they only made it worse. They thanked everyone in the room, but their words quickly turned into jabs at me. The crowd laughed at their jokes, and I could feel my face flush with shame. I couldn't take it anymore and got up to leave. I ordered an Uber and cried all the way home. When Mark finally got home, he was angry. "Why did you walk out like that? Do you know how embarrassing that was for me?" he asked. "What are you talking about?" I replied, hurt by his tone. "Don't play dumb with me, Sarah. I had to deal with my parents yelling at me, and everyone was looking at me like I was a fool for being with you. Are you serious? What about how embarrassing it was for me?" I shot back. "Oh, come on, Sarah, you could have put up with it for one night. It was my parents' anniversary, for God's sake. I was ignored by everyone, and your parents made fun of me during their toast. How could you expect me to stay there and take that? I'm not saying what they did was right, but you could have gotten through it. I would have spoken to them afterward." "What good would that have done for me? You don't understand how it feels to be humiliated like that." Everyone was laughing at me. "You've never been in that position, so it's easy for you to say." "My parents expect an apology from you," he demanded. "I want one too," I said, defiantly. "I'm not apologizing. I won't apologize until they apologize to me first. You've always had my back, and I don't see why this is any different." "This is completely different. You humiliated my family in front of all their guests, and now your parents humiliated me, your wife, in front of everyone. Maybe my parents were right about you. You're impossible," Mark snapped, before retreating to the guest bedroom. I couldn't understand his sudden change in attitude. Was it really that bad for him that I walked out? He had always stood up for me in the past, especially when his parents said hurtful things. By walking out, I was trying to show him just how badly they made me feel, but Mark didn't seem to care. For the next week, Mark didn't speak to me. His parents bombarded me with texts calling me ungrateful and an embarrassment. I tried reaching out to him, but he refused to talk. Eventually, I decided to apologize to both Mark and his parents, even though it felt humiliating. I loved Mark and didn't want this to ruin our relationship. Unfortunately, things only worsened from there. After Mark's parents retired, they started hosting weekly family dinners, and Mark was always invited. The first dinner after our wedding, he brought me along. As soon as I stepped inside, the tension was palpable. Abigail was in another room getting ready, but Charles and Mark's siblings exchanged awkward glances at the sight of me. They didn't talk to me, and Mark left me standing alone while he caught up with his family. When Abigail finally came downstairs, she spotted me and stormed over. "What are you doing here?" she demanded. "Excuse me?" I replied, taken aback by her hostility. "No, I will not excuse you. What are you doing in my house?" "Well, you invited us for dinner," I said, trying to remain calm. "No, I invited Mark. This is a family dinner," she snapped. "I'm Mark's wife, so I'm part of this family, aren't I?" "Absolutely not. An orphan like you has no place in this family," she said coldly. "What, you thought you could hide that detail from us? We do background checks on our children's spouses, and you don't belong in my son's world. You're not in his league," she spat. "Why not? Is that the only thing that matters to you? You're judging me because of my background? Billionaires. This is exactly why you'll never fit in with us. Or maybe it's that I'll never be as superficial as you, because I value who a person truly is. You never even gave me a chance before judging me. Honestly, I'm glad I don't fit into your world." "Sarah, that's enough. Here's some money. Get yourself an Uber and leave," Abigail sneered. I stood frozen, staring at Mark as he handed me the cash, a look of indifference on his face. He shoved it into my hands, then turned away toward his mother. Who smirked at me, my heart dropped, and I turned to leave, tears welling up in my eyes. I couldn't understand how things had gone so wrong. I cried the entire ride home, consumed by confusion and pain. Was this his way of making things right with his parents after the party? Was he siding with them against me? Whatever the reason, it hurt deeply. Mark was defending his parents, letting them insult me without a second thought. I wanted to scream at him, to call him out, but I knew that would only give them more reason to judge me. So, I stayed silent and left, my mind racing with disbelief. I tried to think if I'd said anything wrong, but I hadn't. I was simply standing up for myself. I did it calmly, with dignity, but that didn't seem to matter to him. When Mark returned home that night, he still refused to talk to me. His silence was like a dagger in my chest. I couldn't shake the feeling that he expected me to apologize, but I couldn't bring myself to do it, not when his mother had crossed the line by insulting me. If anyone should be apologizing, it was him for siding with them. For 2 weeks, we didn't speak. It was hard at first, but eventually, I grew numb to it. Every week, his family held their dinner gatherings, and I stayed home, alone. Honestly, it wasn't the worst thing. It gave me time to think, to reflect on everything. One evening, my parents called me on video chat. "Hey, honey," they greeted warmly. "How's everything going, sweetheart?" Dad asked. "Hey, Mom." "Hey, Dad." "Not great, honestly." "What's going on, sweetie?" "You know we're always here for you," Mom said, concern in her voice. "I don't think you can help with this one, but thanks for offering," I replied. "Where's Mark? Is he not supporting you?" Dad asked. "That's just it. He's part of the problem," I said, trying to hold back my frustration. "Oh no, honey, could you be more specific?" Dad pressed. "Well, his parents are rich and snobby. They see me as some poor girl who doesn't belong in their world. They've made it their mission to humiliate me every time I see them." "What?" Mom exclaimed, clearly furious. "Oh, yeah, the last time I went over, Mark's mom thought it was funny to call me an orphan, an insult, like it's some big revelation. That woman, I swear, I'm going to have words with her," Mom growled. "How dare she talk to you like that?" "And what's Mark doing while all of this is happening?" Dad asked. "I haven't told you much about Mark, because I wanted you to like me for who I am, not for my money. But now Mark's siding with his parents, telling me I was disrespectful for standing up for myself." "Honey, are you sure this is the man you want to be with?" Mom asked, her voice filled with concern. "I love him, but this isn't how I imagined things. We haven't spoken in 2 weeks, and surprisingly, I'm okay with that." Mom's voice softened. "Well, sweetheart, don't worry, your dad and I can help you in ways you might not expect." "What do you mean?" "We're coming there next week. We were planning a vacation with you and Mark, but now it'll be just the 3 of us." "Really? Oh my God, I'm so excited to see you both. I really needed this," I said, finally feeling a flicker of hope. We talked a bit more about plans, and Dad mentioned he had a way to help me get some sweet revenge. I was curious, but didn't ask for details just yet. Then my dad asked about the family dinners, and I told him where the next one was going to be held. Thankfully, I had Mark's email, and since his parents loved sending updates about everything, it wasn't hard to find the location. I passed it along to my parents, and my mom's lawyer friend also reached out, beginning the process of filing for divorce. When my parents arrived in the States, we spent some time together. They treated me to a spa day, paying for everything because they said I deserved it. Meanwhile, they were preparing for their next move, getting back at Mark's family. The day came when my parents walked into the restaurant where Mark's family was dining. From what my dad later told me, Charles and Abigail immediately recognized him and began murmuring. "Hello," Dad greeted them. "Oh my gosh, Mr. Larry, what a surprise," Charles said, clearly startled. "Just happened to see some familiar faces, thought I'd join you for a meal," Dad replied, casually. "Familiar faces? Who are you talking about, Mr. Larry?" Abigail asked, confusion in her voice. "I see Mark here." "Of course, Mark. It's good to see you. I've heard so much about you, but where's my daughter?" Dad asked. "Your daughter?" Abigail stammered, her eyes widening. "I think you're mistaken. We don't know you have a daughter." "Of course I do. She's married to Mark." "What?" Abigail and Charles both exclaimed. "Yes, her name's Sarah, and she was adopted," Dad said with a calm authority. "Wait, you're her father?" Charles asked, taken aback. "Yes, I am. And now I understand what the problem is. It's you, Dad said, his tone icy. What? No, we had no idea about this. Abigail tried to defend herself, but my dad wasn't having it. She didn't want your fake kindness. You should have treated her like a person, not because of where she came from. My dad handed Mark the divorce papers. She asked me to pass these along. Have a nice evening, he said before walking out. It didn't take long for the business ties to start unraveling.